This is update for June 7, 2022, day 104 of the war, end of the date update. Few general news or just news topics. So first about grain and grain export, grain harvest in Ukraine. So Ukrainian authorities announced today that Ukraine is able to export about 2 million tons of grain through Poland and through Romania. So Poland is here, and most of it is going through Romania. Romania is here. There is a port here on the Black Sea, which is essentially next, bordering Ukraine. So Ukraine is able to export 2 million tons, which in the annual, if we translate to annual number, it's about 24 million tons. In a normal year before the war, Ukraine would export between 40 to 50 million tons, obviously depending on the weather, depending on the harvest, so it varies. So this really means that Ukraine will be able to export only half of what used to be, plus minus. This is obviously ballparking. At the same time, their harvest in Ukraine probably will go down significantly. So it will be that sort of extra that could be exported will probably go down to about 30 million. So essentially everything that Ukraine has as extra, it will be able to export. It's not a great situation for Ukraine. It's not a great situation for the world, but at the same time, due to the war, as we discussed, there are fewer incentives for the farmers to produce. So the harvest will definitely be lower, and obviously because of the territories that were captured. So so that's a quick update on their grain export and just generally harvest in Ukraine. Another topic is the sort of number of prisoners of war, Ukrainian prisoners of war. So Russian military declared today that they have 6.5 thousand Ukrainian soldiers as POWs in Russian hands. Ukraine has much less at this point, probably less than 500, just for comparison. And most of it is obviously coming from Mariupol. And another news, sort of related news. Russian government is paying now 5 million rubles to the family of their dead soldiers, so soldiers who die during this war. That's it for just general news. Now let's actually start going through the front line. Let's do walkthrough. We're gonna start from the north and then gonna go down in a clockwise fashion. So artillery shelling from both sides continued here. No essential changes here. Now let's look what's going on around Kharkiv. Oops. Sorry. So again, the same situation. The same situation remains there. Ukrainian troops trying to push Russian troops out of Ukrainian territory. Russian troops trying to keep the buffer, and there is this pull and push, low intensity fighting going on, specifically here, Veliki Perehody, in this area around Ternova. So this is essentially where there is points of tension. There's also some small scale attacks around Kazachia Lopань, but essentially there are no meaningful changes. It's all small scale units and nothing major here going on. Let's keep going south. Let's see what's going on at Izyum bridgehead. This is high level overview. Now all of the Ukrainian Lyman bridgehead is totally wiped out, destroyed. No Ukrainian troops are on the eastern side here. The only remaining Ukrainian bridgehead on the eastern side of Severodonetsk is actually town of Severodonetsk, and we'll get there once we get closer to it. Let's actually look now what's going on here. So on the bridge, on the Izyum bridgehead, there are no changes. There is this continued attacks from this village Pasika, south, direction south. So it's basically when I discussed that Hürgen Forest mid grinder, so that was in reference to actually this forest that you can see here. This is where that, all of the similar sort of type of fighting is going on, and essentially about a third of it is captured by Russian troops and 2/3 are controlled by Ukrainian troops. So essentially all of the intense fighting is happening here. There is no meaningful Russian progress here, but it's intense and both sides suffering heavy casualties in this area. Now let's go south. Let's see what's going on at the Severodonetsk salient. So northern shoulder is always quiet. There is fighting in Severodonetsk, and we'll touch a little bit later on that. Let's actually look what's going on around Popasna area, because that's the most important critical area. Today, Russian troops didn't have any advances. Ukrainian troops tried to counterattack, small-scale counterattacks around here, Bilohorivka. But essentially, you can kind of like come any day and there is sort of attack, counterattack in this area. So there's sort of non-stop fighting going on here. There is Russian pressure here towards Mykolaiivka. There was pressure from Karmashovaha towards north. But today Ukrainian troops managed to hold the line. They didn't lose any ground today. Let's look actually at their bigger picture. This is the entire Popasna salient. So we spoke about the sort of more like a northern part of it. The southern part is also stable. No changes here. Russian troops are trying to connect here, and they're attacking from the south, but without any success so far. This is actually situation in Severodonetsk. This is initial stage of it on May 30th, when Russian troops just managed to capture small foothold. Then Ukrainian defenses quickly fell, and essentially Ukrainian troops were retreating without putting up much fighting. Then they finally stopped here at this chemical plant area, and then this is counterattack that happened, and then now Ukrainian troops were pushed back, and the fighting is happening again at this chemical plant. The sort of advantage, or why the Ukrainian troops can hold here for some times, is obviously because they can have support from Ukrainian artillery from the western side, and plus this is industrial area. There is no civilians, so Ukrainian artillery can fire without any reservation. We'll see how long that will hold, but it's definitely creating a problem for the Russian command in terms of, they cannot relax. They have to keep the forces here, and they have to keep the pressure. That means they need to bring more troops here, and they cannot pull these troops to reallocate them to Popasna area or to, let's say, Izyum bridgehead, because as we discussed this many times, the way attacks are happening right now by Russian army are that they pulling troops from sort of inactive stretches of the front line and throwing them to the area where they would like to create a breakout, right? So this is what's going on, and that really means that they cannot pull troops out of there. This is area near Popasna. This is how it looked on June 4th before Russian breakout here near Nirkove. So this is just showing again. This is they broke through here at Nirkove, and they managed to go all the way up north, where they were stopped on outskirts of Mykolaiivka here. So that was a definitely dangerous penetration. So now let's look what's going on here. Let's go south. Let's see what's going on west of Donetsk. Situation here is more or less stable. Only one Russian attack towards this village, New York, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing else is going on here. And as we mentioned, We believe that 61st Naval Infantry Brigade was pulled, or essentially most of it. We may not be not entire unit, but probably most of it was pulled towards Popasna area. So we'll see. We'll know for sure in day or 2 or 3, something like that. We'll find out that. But it's definitely quiet right now here. This is just a kind of closer look to that area where there's a lot of fighting. This is village New York, and Russian troops essentially trying to attack along this road that leads to New York. Now let's look at the Zaporizhzhia front line. There are actually some changes, and Russian sources claim that Ukrainian command brought here first tank brigade for the future sort of counteroffensive or offensive here, which, if that's true, that really means that the Russian troops already know plans of Ukrainian command, and that already almost destroys the purpose of the attack, because if your enemy is prepared, your chances of success are extremely low. So we'll see what happens here, but that's probably not the best use at this point of the first tank brigade, which was re-equipped with T-72s from Poland and Slovakia and Czech Republic. They were upgraded. There is now reactive armor on them, so they kind of like up to standard to fight on the battlefield here in Ukraine. So now let's look a little bit more at the whole front line. We managed to establish 2 more locations that they are actually controlled by Ukraine for sure. Before we had doubts. So these 2 villages are controlled by Ukrainian side. So now we know essentially Ukrainian side is kind of controls this road that connects Kharkiv and Kamensk. But in general, this is the situation at the whole Zaporizhzhia front line. It's quiet, only artillery shelling. And based on sort of Russian sources, the point of attack is going to be somewhere in this direction, which also doesn't make a lot of sense to us. Like, it doesn't really achieve much, honestly. Maybe just creating sort of threat on the flank of this wedge. So maybe it will force to pull this wedge back of the Russian troops, but really doubt about that. We'll see what happens here in the next in the following days, but this could become a hot area in the next day 2 or 5. Let's now move to the Zaporizhzhia front line. Let's see what's going on there. Again, there is no news about this Ukrainian attempt to do counteroffensive. We believe at this point that both sides are turned to the sort of positional defenses, and there is this attack basically died without achieving much success. There is small success in terms of it appears Ukrainian troops managed to build small bridgehead here on their eastern side, and we believe that that Ukrainian troops evacuated Bruskinsk simply because it's super vulnerable, and Ukrainian troops could be easily encircled here. It's not huge amount, it's probably company type of size, a couple companies here, but in any case, we don't have sort of formal confirmation, but based on our information, Ukrainian troops are out of here. But essentially at this point, the front line here is well stabilized, and Ukrainian side and Russian side, they both don't have, in our opinion, resources to continue fighting, meaning to continue active offensive, defensive fighting here, because Ukrainian troops, whatever they had, they exhausted in this failed attack, even though there is some small success there, but essentially relative to the idea which we discussed was to get to Bereslav and then to get to Novakhovka, you obviously can say this was a failure in the end. And it's obviously failure for obvious reason. This is not enough troops to attack, and then Ukrainian side has never managed to figure out strategy against Russian artillery. and superiority of Russian artillery. And specifically, we discussed this good or almost nearly perfect system of Orlan 10 plus Russian artillery, right? So, which works very well and allows Russian troops basically to create a firewall in front of Ukrainian troops, and so Ukrainian troops suffer losses without even seeing Russian troops in many cases. Not always. We're not saying this is always true, but if this is properly done by Russian side, this is what happens. And obviously, Russian side not always does things in the right way, but when they do, then that's what happens. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow, bye bye.